There's a question that has haunted a family, a university, and an entire city for well over a decade now. What on earth happened to Lauren Spierer? Let's get into the mystery of her disappearance.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? How does a student, just walking home on a path she knows, simply vanish? Let's take a look at what we know for sure.
When you break it down, the facts are just chillingly simple. Lauren Spierer, a college student who was just enjoying the end of the semester, went out with some friends one night and was never, ever seen again.
Okay, so let's get grounded in the basics here. We're talking about Lauren Spierer. She was 20 years old and petite, only 4'11". The date is June 3rd, 2011, and the last time anyone saw her was at 4:30 in the morning in Bloomington, Indiana. This really sets the stage for a night that would end in a complete and total mystery.
You know, it really feels like the key to this whole thing is locked up somewhere in her final hours. So let's walk through the timeline that investigators have, painstakingly tried to piece together.
So the night starts off pretty normal, right? But then it just unravels, and fast. You have to notice these critical points. She leaves the bar without her phone or her shoes. There's some kind of physical altercation. She's then shuffled between different apartments, and by all accounts, getting more intoxicated each time. And then, at 4:30 a.m., that's the last time anyone admits to seeing her. Barefoot, alone, and just a few blocks from her own apartment.
So who were the key people here? Well, investigators immediately zeroed in on the last people to see Lauren. You've got Rossman, Beth, and Rosenbaum. They were all with her as the night came to a close. Her boyfriend at the time, Jesse Wolfe, wasn't there, but he was also looked at. Now, it's a really important distinction to make. They are persons of interest, which just means they might have information about the case. None of them have ever been officially named as suspects.
And this is just a gut punch. This one piece of evidence tells you everything you need to know about how vulnerable Lauren was that night. This wasn't a case of just having a few too many. We're talking about surveillance footage showing Corey Rossman literally carrying her over his shoulder. That shows a severe level of intoxication.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, we have a timeline, we have the people she was with, so why is this case still a mystery? Well, let's get into the investigation itself, because this is where the story just becomes one of frustration and so many unanswered questions.
One of the only real, concrete legal things that came out of this, at least early on, had to do with the bar. Kilroy's got cited because they served Lauren, who was only 20, alcohol. Apparently, she used an ID with a totally different physical description, but of course, that did absolutely nothing to explain where she went.
And this right here, this quote from author Sean Cohen, it points to the single biggest wall investigators slammed into. Before they could even really dig in and conduct thorough interviews, the key people who saw her last had all lawyered up, and that effectively created what's been called a wall of silence around this case.
And make no mistake, this wasn't just some small-town police effort. You had multiple agencies, even the FBI, pouring resources into finding her. They did interviews, they searched landfills, but it seemed like every single lead just went cold. The case completely stalled.
So you can imagine the family's frustration. The criminal investigation has basically hit a dead end. So what do? They turn to the civil courts, hoping for a different kind of answer, a different kind of accountability.
And their case, on the surface, seemed pretty straightforward. Their argument was that these young men who were with Lauren had a duty, a responsibility to take care of her, especially given how intoxicated she was. The family argued their failure to do that was negligence and that it directly led to whatever harm came to her.
But here's the thing about civil court. You have to prove this really specific legal concept called proximate cause. And what that means is you have to show a direct, unbroken chain of events, a line from what the defendants did or didn't do to what ultimately happened to Lauren. And that's it. That's the exact point where their case completely crumbled. The court itself said it. Speculation cannot support a finding of proximate cause. Without knowing exactly what happened to Lauren, any connection between the student's actions and her disappearance was, in the eyes of the law, just a theory.
So it's this crazy, tragic irony, right? The very same mystery that stalled the criminal case, the fact that nobody knows what happened to her, is the exact reason the civil case couldn't move forward. Did she fall? Was she abducted by a stranger? Because we don't know for sure, you can't legally hold the last people who saw her responsible. The whole lawsuit was dismissed. And all of that,
It brings us right back to today. The legal options have run out, but the search, and of course the questions, they just go on and on.
Just think about that. 14 years. That is a staggering amount of time for a family to just be stuck in this horrible limbo with zero answers and absolutely no sense of closure.
And what's got to be so frustrating for everyone, especially the family, is this huge gap between what the public has been told and what investigators are holding back. I mean, only one single blurry surveillance photo has ever been released. Meanwhile, there's all this key evidence, other surveillance footage, FBI files, the results of polygraphs, and it's all sealed as part of an active, even if it is cold, investigation.
But through all of this, for 14 years, her mom, Charlene, has been a constant voice. She's maintained a public presence, and she often ends her posts with this simple, absolutely heartbreaking phrase, "Hoping today is the day." It just perfectly captures that endless, daily hope that someone, somewhere, will finally decide to speak up. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with this one final nagging question. After all this time, with the investigation at a standstill, what's it going to take? Is it going to be a forgotten detail, some new piece of evidence, or is it just going to come down to someone's conscience finally getting the better of them?
Look, the bottom line is this investigation is still open. And if you know something, anything, no matter how small you might think it is, here is where you can send it. Because after 14 long years, this family is still waiting, and someone out there knows the truth.